Scuderia Ferrari has raced every year since Formula One began, but few seasons have proved quite as challenging, competitive and controversial as 2010's. For the team, its partners and many fans and followers, the Scuderia's 61st campaign was an exhilarating ride from delight to despair and back again. After a blistering start in Bahrain for drivers Fernando Alonso and Felipe Massa and podium positions elsewhere, Ferrari's early season promise deserted them. But a memorable 1-2 finish at Monza marked the beginning of a remarkable resurgence and a string of wins for Fernando Alonso, who started the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi as leader of the Drivers' Championship. This being Formula One, the reversal in Ferrari's fortunes and the season's events as a whole were set against an ongoing story of technological innovation and development. In 2013, new rules will require that fuel efficiency is doubled within 5 years, using fewer and smaller engines, making the team's relationships with their technological partners more important than ever before. This program looks at just one of them, the oldest in Formula One, as both partners come to terms with the changes introduced in 2010 and the challenges they face together in the future. As well as introducing a new fuel specification for the 2010 season, Formula One's governing body decreed that cars could no longer be refueled during races, requiring teams like Ferrari to redesign their cars and rethink their race strategies. Shell, Ferrari's long-term technological partner, would also have to revise its approach to produce fuel and lubricants that delivered just as much power, but even greater efficiency. The drivers had their own concerns. What effect would bigger fuel tanks and a longer wheelbase have on the handling of their cars? Winter testing hours were limited, and the first Grand Prix of the season in Bahrain was fast approaching. In anticipation of the new regulations, Formula One's fuel formulators had begun their painstaking work several months previously. But before they could burn the midnight oil, they first had to find the right one.
The art of fuel formulation is getting the best power and the best efficiency. So we've worked very, very hard to understand all the chemical elements that go into a fuel to make sure that we select the right one. So this is where we take lots and lots of different refinery streams from around the world, mix them together to make the fuel for the one car. We have to understand the way that the compounds react, how quickly they burn. The engine is doing 18,000 RPM, so we're looking for compounds that burn really quickly and give it the best in efficiency.
More than 200 individual components had to be modelled and analysed. But in 2010, power and efficiency were not going to be the only considerations.
Normally when you refuel 2 or 3 times during the race, you're refueling with cool fuel. So without that cooling effect, something that a lot of people may not realise is that the fuel is actually going to get a lot hotter inside the car. One of the ways to get around this is actually in the fuel formulation itself. We're designing the fuel to be able to deal with these hotter temperatures and not to vaporise in the fuel tank. You can get vapour lock issues. Or the other problem is you can get air bubbles in the fuel. This can cause what's called cavitation. And if you got the most extreme circumstances, the fueling system would be damaged beyond repair.
Then there were 2 further factors, the new fuel's weight and volume.
You're talking 20% of the weight of the car at the start is made up of fuel, so we've put a lot of effort into the fuels for this season to give them the best fuel efficiency on a weight basis. Conversely, if you've got a tank on the car that's a little bit small, you want the good fuel performance on a volume basis, so we're having to cover both angles.
We had all these challenges, and I have to say the initial reaction was probably, oh God.
We've got the density down as low as we can. As I said to Alessandro before, the last one looks the best.
Mike Evans' first batch of candidate fuels for the 2010 season is being tested in Maranello.
You can see from our measurements the fuel economy that's predicted is exactly what we're seeing, so that should give us a good advantage, I guess.
The cooperation between team and technological partner is close and continuous, not least in 2010 when both are climbing a steep learning curve.
The emphasis used to be on power. Now fuel economy is coming into it, and we're all learning.
When you develop a fuel and an oil, you cannot just take a good fuel, put on an engine and expect it works. Engine and fuel and lubricant have to be developed together.
After exhaustive modelling at Thornton, the most promising formulations are made up in small batches and tested for performance and reliability during long-run tests on static engines at Maranello. It's a measured and methodical approach.
You have to understand what you're doing. Just throwing ideas is not good enough. We need to do the genuine research work to understand what happens in an engine working at ridiculously high loads and speeds. Thornton's research environment is invaluable to us because we have a continuous development program of fuels and oils which needs bespoke resource and needs bespoke people and also needs to be very reactive because we need to keep an advantage over the competition.
Evans and his colleagues are regular visitors to Maranello, where their every effort and each new development is rigorously scrutinized, then fast-tracked or sidelined. The demand for improvement is incessant.
Yeah, we normally apply a lot of pressure, but they know us, so they accept this pressure because they are part of the team, they are part of the game.
Formulation and testing complete, the new race fuel for the first 4 races is now subject to ratification by Formula One's governing body, the FIA.
When we design the fuel and we send it off for approval, we clearly want to be as close to the limits as possible. So if we get 1 or 2 error messages telling us we're right on the limit, that's a good thing. We want it to come back telling us we're right on the edge of the formulation space, because otherwise we've over-engineered it and not really exploited all the opportunities.
When approval is granted, production of the fuel finally begins in large quantities. 1 consignment will be dispatched to clear customs in time for the first Grand Prix of the season, while another is prepared for the more imminent challenge, Formula One testing in Spain. At Jerez, car and fuel come together on one of the few remaining occasions before the Formula One Championship begins. Speed is still king, but the significance of fuel efficiency is not lost on the drivers.
Let's say your engine uses a bit less fuel than another engine. Maybe you can do the whole race with 10 or 15 kilos less fuel than another car, which is lap time.
While many factors lie beyond their control, fuel consumption is to some extent in the hands of the drivers.
So we have some mix on the engine.
All of the drivers on their steering wheel, they'll have a button which enables them to make the engine run more lean or more rich. And really what that's doing is affecting the ratio of fuel and air inside the engine. By changing that ratio, you can use less fuel, but you will ultimately have less power.
We have the torque map, which is raining or drying. You have different maps. So we have the revs. We have so many things on the steering wheel, which we are working a lot also when we are driving.
This season, drivers may also be forced to adopt 1 or 2 other options at their disposal.
We've been practicing some lift-off before the corners, braking a little bit earlier, can make 2 tenths slower the time lap, but around 2 or 3% fuel saving.
When you have a heavy car, the way you go into a high-speed corner, you can go in a different way, which you use a little bit less the throttle, take it away the gas a little bit earlier, but braking much later. So you have many things you can do to save a little bit more fuel.
Because each circuit is different, ensuring that drivers have enough fuel to finish but carry the minimum weight across the line presents a major challenge for the race engineers.
Monaco itself is a very, very high downforce circuit. That means basically that you use more fuel. If you look at Monza is a very low downforce circuit, so you tune the car to have a very low drag level.
Whichever circuit they're racing on, drivers will have a very heavy car to start the race and a lighter one to finish. Ultimately, the aim will be the same, to drive at the very limit, wherever that limit may be.
You're talking about completely two different cars to drive, but you are in the limit in both directions. You know, you need to be in the limit, otherwise you're losing time.
I think we are ready. We have some innovative products from Shell that we've been testing all winter, and I think we found the right compromise. We have to be very optimistic.
After 9 months of work, push is coming to shove. 3 weeks later, all the effort proves worthwhile. There is more cause for celebration ahead of the Australian Grand Prix, the 450th race of the two partners' long-standing technological collaboration.
Shell with Ferrari together now since the beginning have had 12 Drivers' Championships and 10 Constructors' Championships, and it's been a tremendous partnership. And obviously since '96, the partnership has been probably the most successful period for any one team in motorsport.
The partnership began over 80 years ago, when Enzo Ferrari founded the Scuderia Ferrari in Modena, originally as the racing team for Alfa Romeo.
This picture is the beginning of the story. This is 1929, the beginning of the Scuderia Ferrari. This was the racing team. You see the facility, and you see in front of the facility the petrol station of Shell.